I didn't think that I could be crushed so callously. People encouraging others to come and bash me or kill me.
It sounds like it came close to taking your life.
Yeah. I was completely lost.
Sam Crompvoets traces her troubles to December 15th, 2014. A lone gunman takes 18 people hostage in the Lint Cafe at Sydney's Martin Place. The 16-hour standoff resulted in the death of 2 captives and the terrorist. There were many questions about the emergency response.
There was a discussion happening publicly about whether or not the Special Forces should have been called in to respond rather than the police.
Dr Crompvoets is a sociologist with more than 20 years of experience researching organisational culture across sporting codes, the corporate sector and defence. She ran a Canberra-based consulting firm employing 15 staff.
The work I was commissioned to do was to go and really try to understand external perceptions of what the Special Forces did. It really wasn't a big deal. It was similar to work I'd done lots and lots of times before.
But what she discovered were simmering tensions between the 2 branches of the Australian Special Forces, the Commandos and the SAS.
Then it snowballed into more people talking to me about what was so problematic about the Special Forces.
Soon, SAS soldiers gave first-hand accounts of what they witnessed in Afghanistan. Alleged war crimes that include our soldiers slitting the throats of 2 Afghan children, their bodies bagged and thrown in a nearby river.
How did you react when you heard these accounts for the first time?
Disbelief, actually, and which is why I worked so hard to kind of find out, is this true? And then the more people I spoke to and the more direct questions I was able to ask them, that's when I realised, yep, this was actually far more widespread than just a kind of one-off.
With more and more wartime atrocities coming to light, Samantha felt compelled to contact the then Chief of Army, General Angus Campbell.
He told me to write it all down and to email it to him.
What Samantha uncovered ultimately led to an inquiry into alleged war crimes committed by Australian Special Forces in Afghanistan. Released in 2020, the Brereton report raised questions about the killing of 39 Afghans by our soldiers between 2005 and 2016. But when the report was released, Samantha says she became the target.
I felt so vulnerable and so exposed because people knew where I lived. I couldn't open my computer or my phone without there being some kind of abuse. Phone calls where someone would just yell at me that I was and unpatriotic, that I was trying to ruin the Defence Force. And what that does then is make you isolate yourself. You isolate yourself from everything, from everyone.
The criticism came from everywhere. Peter Dutton was the Minister for Defence at the time.
It's reported that the doctor and a company, Rapid Context, have been awarded a number of contracts by Defence. Are you concerned about that generally without specifically mentioning this one?
Well, I've made my view very clear to Defence, and I don't think you'll see any more contracts awarded in this regard.
To what extent did you interpret this as you being blamed for the information that had come to light?
100% blamed. I'd been blamed since the beginning, not from the leaders within the ADF at all, but externally the perception was that I had somehow done this. These accusations that I was trying to feminise the Defence Force, that I must hate the Defence Force.
Was any of that true?
Well, it's true that I'm a woman, not a feminist. Yes, I am a feminist. I'm a very proud feminist. But when you read the accounts and hear the stories that people told me, this wasn't a grey area, fog of war, where people had to make decisions in really complex situations. These were behaviours that were planned for, deliberate, repeated, concealed.
Far from the battlefields of Afghanistan, Samantha was fighting her own war and losing.
I had 15 staff. I had to make them redundant, which was really hard. It was really hard to do that. I just could not make sense of it. I couldn't make sense of what I had done wrong, really, to deserve that kind of treatment and for my livelihood to be ended, my reputation to be completely just dismissed, really.
Where did that lead you to?
Self-harming really badly, to the point where my husband had to rush me to hospital, and Yeah, and I stayed in hospital for a couple of months.
Today, Samantha finds herself in New South Wales's Northern Rivers region after 15 years of living and raising her 3 children in the nation's capital.
I think part of moving away was avoidance. It was to protect myself and my family because it really was dominating our life every day. Being around people who don't always follow what's going on in the Defence Force, that's been really good. We are lucky.
Better than the -4 Canberra winter today, that's for sure.
Husband Jerome retired after 30 years in the military. They both say they've now found peace.
Why did we ever live anywhere else? I've had a lot of time to reflect, and I'm really grateful for that, actually. To think, to write, to reset. I definitely feel stronger, and I want to get out there, and I do want to be where I can add value. I do want to be a part of the conversation.
The result in the Ben Roberts-Smith defamation trial, how significant was that for you?
It was really significant. I feel like a weight had been lifted off my shoulders. I think just further evidence that that report that I wrote initially was on the right track.
Though Samantha and her family paid a heavy price and life looks significantly different to how it did, she maintains it was the right thing to do.
If I had my time over again, I would do it again. I would make that same decision. I've wanted to be a really good role model to my children. I want them to stand up for what is right. I want them to feel confident to speak out.
There's incredible respect in this country, as there well should be, for people in military, but that often leads to this level of protection that means that a woman who was doing a job and was on the receiving end of information she didn't ask for is the focus of people's aggression rather than looking at, could this be something that actually happened and should we maybe focus on these people?
And that's the thing, is she wasn't looking for this story. This is something that she was commissioned to do, and these findings were just, you know, she stumbled across this.
That's correct. That's the story she tells.
And you got to wonder where the duty of care is of the government. Like they haven't followed up and made sure she's okay. She's been made a scapegoat at the end of the day. And you're right, having Ben Roberts-Smith lose his defamation case against those newspapers, that must have been huge vindication for her.
Obviously, we need to point out that Ben Roberts-Smith is appealing the result of his defamation case. We also reached out to the opposition leader Peter Dutton for a statement in response to some of those descriptions made by Samantha Crompvoets. Peter Dutton has not responded at this point.
And if this story has raised any issues for you, there is support available. Lifeline on 131114.